We are on the second episode of The Twilight Zone. On our journey to review every single episode of The Twilight Zone is episode 2, One for the Angels, premiering on October 9th, 1959. After the intro, which is not completely developed at this point, but we do get a narration by Rod Serling, which I was going to play, but they hit me with copyright, so I'm just going to have to read it, since the narration does a good job of setting up the scene. I'll try to do my best Rod Serling impression. Street scene, summer. The present. Men on a sidewalk named Lou Bookman, age 60-ish, occupation pitchman. Lou Bookman, a fixture of the summer. A rather minor component to a hot July, a nondescript, commonplace little man whose life is a bread mill built out of sidewalks. In just a moment, Lou Bookman will have to concern himself with survival, because as of 3 o'clock this hot July afternoon, he'll be stalked by Mr. Death. Great impression by me. Reading these narrations, you see how much of the story they do give away, but they want you to tune in for the rest of the episode, so I guess it makes sense. So our main character is Mr. Lou Bookman, who is played by comedian Ed Wynn, who was a literal clown, and did the voice of the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland, Uncle Albert in Mary Poppins, and was the toy maker in Babes in Toyland. And the role he plays here is similar to the ones in Babes in Toyland. He's also a toy maker. Also interesting about his career, it started taking off in the 60s, and unfortunately he passed away in 1966. He was born in 1886. So an example of an actor not giving up. His career took off in his late 60s. Nice. And even though this one deals with the Grim Reaper, this is a more lighthearted episode than we got from the first one. It also seems to be making up for the amount of dead air and loneliness there was in the debut episode, Where's Everybody?, where a guy's wandering around town by himself, with having a ton of dialogue. As we see in the opening scene, Lou Bookman is dealing with a bunch of kids, where he's selling them toys and trinkets, and you could tell he's really loved by the children. And when he goes back to his toy shop, he's greeted by Death himself. They don't do any costumes here, he just looks like a regular guy, but he does have the ability to disappear and appear in different parts of the room. And Mr. Death tells him that at midnight, he's going to pass away. But before this Grim Reaper takes his soul, they're reasonable down there in hell, or maybe heaven. Seems like he comes from hell, though. And he can make him an offer if there's any extenuating circumstances, if there's kids or an elderly one that he has to take care of, his life can maybe be extended, or if he has some quote-unquote unfinished business. Unfortunately for Mr. Bookman, he doesn't have any kids, he doesn't have any family, and he can't really think of any unfinished business, so he's going to pass away at 12 o'clock from a heart attack. Now this sets up an interesting scenario, but where it goes, I think is a bit underwhelming. Mr. Bookman says that he wants to make a pitch, a big pitch. We're assuming he means to a toy company to sell a really big toy that'll change lots of kids' lives. And after some begging, Mr. Death agrees and lets Mr. Bookman do this pitch. And there is quite a shocking scene as he's walking out of his toy shop, thinking that he just cheated Death, and Mr. Bookman is not very smart. This character is not the best because he's not cunning, he's not smart. In fact, he tells Death himself many times that he's going to cheat him. He's just BSing that he has this big pitch. He has nothing in mind, and he tells this to the Grim Reaper. Like, what an idiot. And then tries to run away from him, as if that's going to work. He's already shown that he has powers to take his life, to appear anywhere he wants to, and the Grim Reaper can only be seen by people that are about to die. So him trying to outsmart this Grim Reaper is a mind-numbing scene where he's running out, pretending like he can outrun Satan himself. This character does come off a bit too buffoonish. But when he gets outside, a little girl gets hit by a car, and this comes out of nowhere. And this really surprised me the first time I saw it, because there's no setup to this whatsoever. Just the girl's walking out in the street, and bam, she gets hit by a car, and she's dead. And the Grim Reaper explains to Mr. Bookman that because he extended his life, he had to take someone else's life. I mean, quoted to me, he's got to be able to take someone's life today, so he decided to take this little girl. It also shows that the Grim Reaper is a step ahead of him. And the fact that he doesn't even make Bookman explain what this pitch is, I believe is a bit of a plot hole. But the Grim Reaper is about to get a lot dumber. I don't want to be too negative on this episode. It's not the worst, but there's just a few head-scratching moments, which doesn't usually happen with Rod Serling's writing. But I guess he's still getting his footing in this Twilight Zone thing. The episode is, of course, written solely by Rod Serling, and it's directed by Robert Parrish. He directed the original 1967 James Bond Casino Royale, and a ton of film noir movies going back to the 1920s. So we have a deft director. at the helm here, but I don't think this episode really shows it. And he directed a lot of film noir movies in the 1950s. Like The Mob, Shoot First, Fire Down Below, and also direct 2 other Twilight Zone episodes. Episode 30 is Season 1, A Stop at Willoughby, and Episode 35, The Mighty Casey. He also went on to do The Destructors. So he's a great director, but you don't see any of that here. So Mr. Bookman has a bit of a predicament. He has been able to extend his life for an undetermined amount of time until he does this pitch for his toys. But we have no idea what this pitch is going to be, and so he decides to do the pitch to Mr. Death himself. And this might be the second worst scene, besides the one where he tries to run away from Mr. Death. That's his official name. Or we just call him the Grim Reaper. I mean, he's selling him a tie, little trinkets, a toy car. This is not a very good pitch, and I have no idea why bands of string and a tie. So this is the pitch that he's been building up to this entire time, and the climax of this episode. And I think a bit of a letdown. So I think I'm going to give One for the Angels a 4. It's just a bit below average. Certainly not the worst episode we're going to see, since the setup is quite good, but the pitch is underwhelming. Mr. Bookman doesn't seem to be taking any of this too seriously. You can see he has some comedic chops, but I prefer the more darker or very out there sci-fi adventures of the Twilight Zone. This doesn't have enough thrills, or chills, or mystery. And come on, what this episode really is about is a guy who's selling the Grim Reaper a toy car. Like, come on. Why the hell would he need any of that stuff? Don't he have tons of stuff in hell? So he makes his pitch, saves the girl's life, and he ends up going to heaven, we assume. Here's some fun facts about the episode. The toy Robbie the Robot featured in this episode is the 1957 Robbie mechanized robot. It actually starts with a scene of Robbie the Robot, which did catch my eye, since he's from my favorite 50s sci-fi movie, Forbidden Planet. In doing some digging, I found that actually The Twilight Zone was filmed at MGM Studios, which also created Forbidden Planet, so actually Rob Sterling used some of the props and costumes from Forbidden Planet, including this miniature. And towards the bottom it says, in consideration of Edwin's advanced age, yep, he would pass away 7 years later, the nighttime scenes were filled during the day, with tarpaulins pulled over the set to give it the illusion of night. How nice of them. Next up is Episode 3 of The Twilight Zone, Mr. Deaton on Doomsday, our first of many westerns that we're going to encounter in this series. And check out our playlist for all episodes of the other series that we've covered. Finished Monsters, Fear Itself, we did Tales from the Dark Side, Black Mirror, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Cowboy Bebop, and Pet Shop of Horrors. Thanks a lot.